It is Wednesday, my dudes, and Valve is popping off with a bunch of new announcements. 3 new announcements, which is kind of crazy because who knew they knew how to count to 3? Got 'em. But yeah, 3 new announcements. 1 being the Steam Frame, 2 being the new Steam Machine, and the Steam Controller. And all 3 of these are very exciting, not just for the devices themselves, but what they could do for the industry moving forward. So we're going to talk about all 3 of them. But before we do, if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Dustin. I make these YouTube videos here. I also do podcasts over at Last Stand. So welcome. And if you enjoy what you see so far, or maybe by the end of the video, consider giving me a subscription. I'm working on that 10,000 subscriber mark, and that would help me out significantly. I appreciate you hanging out, though. Let's talk about these announcements. Let's start with the Steam controller, because I think some people might consider that the least exciting because it is, just a controller, but I was a fan of the original Steam controller, not for every game, and it was definitely weird with its focus on trackpads, but I think they had something going for it. And so when I saw them adapt some of the things they learned from the Steam controller into the Steam Deck, I thought, oh, okay, this is cool. And now it's clear it's reaching its final form with this new Steam controller, complete with the touchpads, the back buttons, the haptic feedback, also the touch-sensitive buttons. It's all there. And as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, I have a downstairs PC, and this type of controller would be perfect for it. Specifically, just that sometimes you need to navigate PC menus when you're not necessarily in front of a mouse and keyboard for a gaming scenario. Having these trackpads there, it's going to be really nice. One of the best things about playing games on Steam, and particularly using their hardware, is that you can customize it to your heart's content. And I was seeing some of the gyro aiming and stuff, and while gyro aiming isn't anything new, I think some people consider giving it a shot at some point, particularly in the PC area where you can really customize it to your liking as far as when it turns on and off. But gyro aiming, we're not talking about Wii stuff here, okay? Using the gyro aiming can feel like a very precise, almost mouse-like input. And so to have this controller and all these different elements combined, pretty cool. They also showed off it has this nifty way to charge it, where it's like this little puck that it drops on. And that's really nice that that's included right out of the box. So yeah, I'm definitely 100% in for a new Steam controller. I love those touchpads on the deck, and having that for the living room is just going to be awesome. So moving on to the Steam Frame. This is their new VR headset. It is replacing the Index. I've never actually used an Index because I've never known anyone who owned it. It was a pretty expensive, pricey device. And I would assume that this device is going to be no different, but clearly it is a step above in many ways. Specifically in that this device doesn't necessarily require you to have a computer. I think they said at some point that it's kind of stream focused, but it still has an ARM processor right on it. And that's kind of the low-key, really interesting thing about this for the more nerdy people out there, is the fact that Valve was just like, oh yeah, we've been working on an open source project to translate x86 Windows games onto an ARM processor. That is kind of nuts, just low-key drop. And it makes me wonder about the future. Is Valve thinking about using this translation layer so that any PC game could also run on an M1 or whatever M series Mac that runs on ARM architecture? That'd be pretty crazy. But anyway, so this device will be able to play PC VR games from your Steam account or just regular games. They were showing Hades running on this, and in one interview with Tested, I believe they were saying that they didn't send this to Supergiant. They just asked if they had permission to use it as part of the demo, and it just ran on it. So as basic as it sounds, it literally is a Steam Deck for your face with streaming possibilities. And streaming, I think initially is a little weird to think about. I think it gives people bad vibes thinking about other streaming situations with gaming, particularly with things like the Quest, right? You need to have a good router, and even then maybe you're going to get a little latency or something. So it can be a little dicey, but the people that get it to work, it works really well. Well, Valve went and circumvented all of that and have a dongle that you can just plug into your computer. And while it's not necessarily going to work for your whole house, but if you're within viewing distance of your computer, because I believe it's Wi-Fi 6, it sounds like this thing is going to be awesome for streaming your VR or regular PC games right to this device. So that was kind of my main hang up with the possibility of this device before it was announced, but it seems like they have that figured out. My big question is it enough to, it's maybe too soon to use revive the VR industry, but to revitalize it? Because right now, at least to me, in the mainstream sense, VR is kind of dead. And make sure you're listening here, specifically in the mainstream space, because I think for more VR niches, it is still alive. And there's lots of people playing VR games and new VR games coming out. But it seems like VR didn't necessarily take off like some people expected it to. But one of the main hangups for people has been the fact that in order to play higher quality PC games, you've needed to have it tethered to your PC, whether that's plugged directly in, like the Index, or streaming it, which can be a little dicey. And so the fact that Valve has went and fixed those issues with either running games directly on the device or being able to stream it from your PC, pretty interesting. So we'll have to wait and see more about the Steam Frame. I'm curious. The problem I have is that every few years I buy a new VR headset, I'm into it for a little bit, and then eventually I put it down. It happened with the Quest 1. Well, actually, no, it started with the Oculus Rift 1, and then the Quest 1, Quest 2, PSVR 1, PSVR 2. That's about it. I didn't get any crazier than that. But all of those devices, I've thought that they were really cool, and I had a lot of great experiences on them, but I eventually just put them down. Last but not least, and of course, this is probably the big one for most people, and that's going to be the Steam Machine. And everyone knows that if you're watching this video, if you're this interested in the possibility, you already know that Valve tried this 10 years, more than 10 years ago at this point. I can't remember exactly when. Didn't go so well, but things are clearly very different. They are ready now with Proton, with translation layers, in order to get any, well, virtually, not literally every Windows game running on Linux with little or sometimes no developer intervention. And yes, it is the Gabe Cube. The Gabe Cube lives. I really like the way this thing looks. It's cute. I love how small and compact it is. It seems like it's something you could use as like a LAN PC if you want to just throw it in your bag, go wherever. Or you can have it live comfortably under your living room, and your significant other, your partner, whatever, isn't going to complain about it, unlike the gaudy PS5. So I recommend watching a much more technical channel about the specific specs about this, whether that's Digital Foundry or maybe Moore's Law is Dead has one out. Maybe Jimmy over at Deck Ready can be more clear about it. But the main thing is that Valve has said that this will be able to play games at 4K 60 with upscaling, with FSR upscaling. And I believe that the chip that they're using is not really the latest and greatest or a very new chip. And the main thing is that it only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which, to my understanding, could potentially hold this thing back from certain titles, or just being able to run nicely with good quality settings. So I think it's important to keep your expectations in check on what this thing is going to be able to do. And to credit Digital Foundry, I highly recommend checking out their long video about this. It seems like this thing is going to be better than an Xbox Series S, but maybe not quite as good as a PS5, but leaning towards PlayStation 5. And that seems to make sense because you want to target the market that might be untapped for PC players, right? The hardcore PC space already has their insane rigs. They might have multiple rigs, one in the living room, one in their den or their gamer dungeon or whatever. And so this is a nice way to get people that maybe are in the console space, or maybe they got introduced and bathed into the PC ecosystem through the Steam Deck, into something that's familiar, like a console. And I think what's going to be important is the price point based on what they're getting in terms of power and performance from it. And getting into that price point, I think a big part of it will also be the 2 models that they've announced. I believe one is 256 gigs and one is 1 terabyte. And of course, you can expand those whether you open it up and put a new NVMe drive in it, or you stick an SD card slot in it, though you're maybe going to have a little bit worse loading times with that. The fact that they're releasing a 256 gig model tells me that they are going to be leaning on trying to get this thing as affordable as possible. What that means, I'm not really sure. I'm nowhere near as technically minded as a lot of the other channels that you're probably watching in terms of all these Steam Deck videos. I guess I'm only just thinking from a market perspective that I would hope that this thing is around or slightly less than a PlayStation 5. So if they could get this thing somewhere around $400 to $500, I think it could be a really appealing option for a lot of people. Particularly if they understand those caveats of maybe not running as nice as a PS5. And it is interesting too that it's clear that Valve wants this to be the starting point, much like the Steam Deck was the starting point for this new era of PC handheld consoles, or whatever, PC handheld devices. That the Steam machine, this new one, is going to be the starting point for this new wave of Linux-based SteamOS computers that you'll be able to use like a console and have other manufacturers develop them. And that'll be great because it will give people options. The Steam machine from Valve could be a good entry option for people that aren't necessarily looking for the craziest performance and the craziest visuals, but they want something affordable that they can play pretty much most of the newer games out there. And I think that's, a cool little device. And it comes at a really interesting time, too. If we start getting into other manufacturers making them that are much more high spec, potentially a little more expensive, it comes at an interesting point where Xbox is also teasing of them doing the same thing with their next console, of a PC console hybrid, but in their case, it's running Windows and also potentially very high end. And it's not feeling very good for Microsoft, if you ask me. I think people that maybe are from the Xbox ecosystem are looking around and they're like, man, there's so many people that are into PCs and into the Valve ecosystem. Maybe they see how prosumer they can be with their refunds and things like that, and looking at Microsoft and being like, maybe not. Maybe I'm just going to switch over. Again, it's only going to appeal to certain people because it's not going to necessarily be... I guess I can guarantee that this Steam machine is not going to run games as nicely as whatever the next Xbox hybrid console is. It's just simply not. But again, that might not matter to some people. Either way, I am excited for a new player to enter the ring and a new space to be opened up in gaming for these PC, console, whatever, hybrid things. As I mentioned earlier in the video, have a living room PC. It currently runs Windows, and the Windows on it is stinky. I don't like it. I'm probably going to try to do a Bazite PC build in the future, which is basically a version of SteamOS for Linux. And I'm hearing about the compatibility on NVIDIA is much better. That's what I was waiting for, and I'm really curious to try that out. So I'm kind of gonna have a feeling of what it's like to have a Steam machine way before the Steam machine comes out, and that's pretty cool. One last thing I want to address is a lot of people are wondering if Valve is putting out this new hardware, are they going to launch it with a new game? I was wondering if even we were going to get a game announcement today, whether it's Half-Life 3 or I've seen some people refer to it as Half-Life X. I've been following all the rumors very closely, but to me, there's enough indication that this is probably going to happen. What it is, I don't know. It sounds like a Half-Life game. If it is a continuation of Half-Life, I am super pumped for that. I played all Half-Life 2 and its episodes a few years back for the first time all the way through and had a great time. So Valve, please make it happen. Maybe we can get an announcement at the Game Awards. That would be sick. And that's it for this video. So let me know. Tell me, what did you think about this slew of new announcements from Valve? Are you interested in a Steam machine, Steam frame, Steam controller, 1, 2, or all 3 of them? Let me know. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.